But now, I'm super happy to introduce the final panel of today on this stage on impact. It will be led by an amazing woman, also known as the girl who gets it done. She's here from WeAreLATech, so traveled here all the way from LA. Give an amazing applause to Espree Devora. Espree, I can give you my mic. That's not a problem. Yeah.
There we go.
Hello, hello, hello. Everybody come on up to the front. Come on up to the front so we could kumbaya together. Stand up, stand up, stand up. Come up to the front. Oh, come on. Do you want to hear how I won $1 million? Who wants to hear how I won $1 million? Because you can attain this too. But I'll only tell you if you come up to the front. All right, we have to wait for the other speakers. So I am going to tell you a little story about literally how I won a game show in Los Angeles while we're waiting for the other speakers to be mic'd up. It's really important because founding a company is incredibly difficult. It is just one of the hardest things to persevere and keep up with your dreams no matter what challenges come in front of you. So years ago, there was a time where I was building my company and I couldn't pay rent and I couldn't pay my staff and I didn't know how I was going to make it to the next month. And there's a game show in Los Angeles called The Price is Right. And I thought, you know what? If somebody on the show can win, so can I. Now, I'd never been on the game show. I didn't know how to get on the game show. I didn't know what I was going to do to make it happen. But you could win a car, and then you could sell the car, or you could do all these things. I just decided I would somehow get on this game show and make it happen. So I do this research to find out how to get on. And then I start doing this thing called the winning dance. And I would go in my living room and do the winning dance. And my friends would call me and they'd say, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing the winning dance. They're like, what is that? I'm like, I'm winning a game show right now. They're like, you're winning a game show? Oh, I'm in my living room, but I'm like visualizing it. Anyway, I make it on the stage at The Price is Right. That's what the game show is called. And I'm doing the winning dance all through. And everybody's asking me, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing the winning dance. I'm doing the winning dance. I'm the casting directors, the host of the TV show, everybody. I'm telling them. And this winning dance like gets me on the platform to win the game show. And the guy's like, you can't do your winning dance yet. You haven't won. And then by the serendipitous entrepreneurial skies that allowed the good fortune to come into my life, I actually won the car, and the TV show said, now you could do your winning dance. And I do the winning dance, I win the car, I sell the car within a week, I pay my rent, I pay my staff, and my company continued on for years to come. So always be able to like invent your own reality and pivot with the challenges. I think the girls are ready to talk about other forms of investing. So this is going to be a live podcast on the Women in Tech podcast. Really, really excited. Let me grab my notes. I have Rita and Kaja here. My name is Espree Devora. I am the girl who gets it done. I have an organization in Los Angeles called WeAreLATech, and I am the producer and host of Women in Tech. And so today we're going to be talking about impact investing. First, go ahead, girls, and introduce yourselves.
Go for it.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Rita. I work at Maze. Maze is an impact investing company based in Portugal, in Lisbon. And basically, we are 5 years old. We're created to build this impact investing market, and we work in 3 main areas, just very quickly. Public sector work, acceleration, and an impact investing fund.
And Kaja, why don't you come closer?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I'm Kaja. I have several hats, many of them within the impact investing area. I work with Nordic Impact and Catapult, and what we do is invest in and help grow impact-driven tech companies. We have several business units, including a Catapult Accelerator, a Catapult Fund, and a Physical Future Fest that takes place in Oslo every May.
And why impact investing? Why did you both choose that route? And you deal with the Nordic region, and you specialize in Portugal and surrounding areas, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right now, yeah, Europe as a whole.
Yeah. And why choose impact investing?
To me, it just makes complete sense. I think impact investing can be viewed as, because it depends who you ask what answer you get of what impact investing is, and it depends on the background of the practitioners and investors. But I think it's interesting to see it as a perspective and an opportunity in finding cases that can, like big scalable technology cases that can solve real social and environmental challenges. So I think, yeah.
And how about for you?
Yeah, so complementing, because I think we have the same kind of rationale, complementing what Kaja said. I think that impact investing is basically just adding an extra layer in the variables when you're considering your investment. So I think that the initial process is the same as any other investment, but here just add the other perspective, which is like, is this business helping the challenge of like social inequality?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's a big problem, or the threat that we're going through, like we're putting the environment at, right? Like at the end of the day, ultimately, even our species as human beings is endangered. So I think that it's just trying to invest in businesses which are profitable, scalable, successful, but that really have the mission of trying to tackle these main challenges and look at them as economic opportunities.
And how large is your fund so everybody could get an idea?
Well, we have several businesses. One is the accelerator, where we go in with 150K tickets of dollars into startups. And the fund we're building now, the Catapult Fund, is $120 million. Yeah. So.
And how about your fund?
Ours is like, it's a different scale, it's a different market, but I think it's quite significant given the context. It's 40 million. We're still finalizing now the fundraising, so it's still not operational, but yeah.
And what do you look, I want to get into something that really intrigued me, which one of the funds you work with is a student-run venture fund.
Yes.
But before we talk about that, what do you look for in investing? Because I'm sure everybody in here wants to raise money. So what do you look for in investing?
I think that, well, obviously the basics, right? Like a profitable, like business model, like a good business, innovative, scalable, with a good market opportunity that you can consider that. Then what we were talking about, like this impact opportunity and providing services to a new group of people or something like that. So improving either this component of social or environmental, but then I think that it all comes down to the teams, and this is very cliche, but I think this is it. Like you need to feel comfortable with like the empathy that you have with the founders, with their capabilities of taking the business forwards, and in the impact investing scene, it all comes down to the intentionality of the founders. Like, why are they doing this? Are they, using this impact perspective as a means to get money and then have their business running, or is the impact what really moves them? And can we as investors be comfortable that throughout their journey as business leaders and taking the business forward, they will be loyal to this mission.
Right.
Yeah, I think these are...
Yeah, I think those are really all important points, and particularly that intentionality, because that when you look at startups that early stage, it's most likely the business plan is going to pivot or change somehow. So how the founders, where they come from, and their kind of intentionality and purpose in going into this area that they're working in is really important, I think.
Awesome.
And I think if you look at it from a sustainability challenges perspective, then it's very interesting to see, look to these areas that will need to change like dramatically or on like a deep structural level if we are to even have a chance of solving some of these sustainable development goals. And that includes areas such as agri-tech and food, transport, and energy systems, all these big kind of systems that need to get new radical ideas. And so it's interesting to look at how interaction with current like niche technologies that are completely different to what exists right now, how one can, as an investor, help them grow into the mainstream. Yeah.
And remember that on Slido you can ask the questions that you have, so we will be sure to get to questions before we wrap up. And so let's move into, you have a student-run venture fund. That's so cool because it's just such a great way to inspire mentorship and prepare future leaders. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So it's like the impact hat is very much a Nordic impact full-time work I do, and Wave Ventures is not an outspoken impact investor, but we do have impact investments in our portfolio as well. And WAVE is basically, it was started in Finland a couple of years ago with a mission of accelerating talent, both as giving students an opportunity to go into venture capital and trying to bridge kind of what exists of talent within universities and ideas and research institutes, and kind of try and like lift those up more, because I think currently there's quite a big gap in a lot of amazing ideas that exist at research and university level, but that don't necessarily know the opportunities in venture capital. Yeah.
Totally. And what challenge have you overcome successfully, and what did you learn from it?
Okay. So as a company, I would say that, so we were created 5 years ago. There was no impact investing market in Portugal. It was not even known. And we were, like, just to explain a little bit like how it was created, because I think, to be fair, like very quickly, the challenge was creating it as a market and having it in the agenda of Portugal and putting people talking about it, and how we overcame that as a country was basically there's Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation, which is one of the main foundations in Portugal, like big philanthropists, and they were very attentive to what was happening, you know, in the UK, in the US, in this area. And they wanted to foster this in Portugal, so bringing market-based solutions to help solve the problems, social, environmental. And so we created, we started by the Social Investment Task Force, which basically gathered main stakeholders of the country to talk about it, define a strategy. And, you know, like this was in 2013-14. And through this, like right now, there's an 150 million euro fund dedicated to social innovation with different type of instruments to whom we were part of, like we helped create it. There's our fund of 40 million euros, which is about to be closed. There are many more acceleration programs being created. There's an increasing pipeline. We as Maze, we are now starting our international operations, so wanting really to, with the acceleration program, trying to attract European or actually global international startups to come being accelerated, explore Portugal as a market and Europe as well. So I think that we've come a long way, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. Yeah.
How about you? What's a challenge you've successfully overcome, and how did you overcome it?
Well, at least we're working on overcoming several challenges. I think one big thing, if you look at the Nordic region, is that, and I work a lot with different initiatives across the region, and it's very clear that there's a massive momentum for impact investing right now, both from the investor side and also startups kind of speaking to their impact. And there's just a lack of visibility currently still. Like there's a lot of great initiatives popping up, but they don't know what exists. And of the investor gatherings that we set up, the majority of investors tend to say that they don't think there's enough good cases. And when you go to the more like startup gatherings, they say the same, but with regards to investors, that there aren't enough investors. So it just is about kind of creating this meeting place for them. So that was the mission behind starting this Nordic Impact Investing Network, which we have up and running now, which is basically bridging investors, communities, and startups across the region. And that's been very helpful in kind of creating this common ecosystem, I think, and just starting to put words to, or like create a common storyline for the potential of impact investing in the Nordics and what's unique in that region. Yeah.
And a lot of people ask me what are the differences in the startup culture around the world. I'm curious, what do you think the differences are in impact investing from, you know, Portugal and the surrounding areas to the Nordic region? Are there very significant differences or very significant commonalities you wouldn't think of?
Depends a bit where you look in terms of industry, I think, but if there's one thing that I feel can be said about the overall Nordic region is that there is some inherent understanding of, or like inherent focus on sustainability, or like with that welfare system background, that you see that a lot in both the family offices from the investor side and a lot of the startups coming out of the region. So I think that is something to tap into when we want to kind of build up that ecosystem into more of a kind of impact tech hub. Yeah.
Yes, in Portugal, like I would say that the difference between the tech scene and the impact investing scene, like it's yeah, it's this focus on sustainability, on having like this other aspect of really wanting to solve this problem, because it's a bit cheesy, but like at the end of the day, it's this intentionality. Like, it touches your heart. Like you're doing that because you want to improve people's lives somehow, like, and really contribute to the world. So you see that in comparison to, comparing the market of Portugal or the Southern Europe with the Nordics, like I'm not, it would be unfair because I'm not super knowledgeable of what's happening. I would say that definitely we are still a little bit behind in terms of traction, in terms of market. So needing like a little bit more case studies, even though like things are catching up, like a lot of things being done in Portugal, in Spain, France, Italy. But in terms of like differences in terms of ways of working or the market functioning, I'm not very clear. I think that it would be very comparable to the tech world, so that there wouldn't be big differences, I would say. I'm not sure.
What would you say, like, I mean, starting a fund is close to impossible. How did you make it possible? Like, what was that step one in starting a fund?
Yeah, I think we have different approaches, right? Because we worked with kind of different types of investors, which is also interesting because it clearly depends on which region you operate in and kind of where you come from. The way we started was it's been close interactions with a lot of Norwegian family offices initially, because I think if you also see that on a global level, you see a lot of these new generations in family offices wanting to take the heritage and kind of business into a new direction that it rhymes more with impact and impact investing. But you clearly have that in also other kind of institutional investors.
We do, yes. Yeah. So in Portugal, I would say that the approach wasn't so much from like big families, because the context as a country is slightly different, and the capital available is also different. So we started by, first of all, like creating some case studies like at a very small scale, and started intermediating, meaning that like we worked with three, like in terms of Maze, we started with three startups, like really like impact startups, making a business case for them and an investment case. And we're talking about companies that weren't even companies, they were associations. So this aspect of raising investment from a VC was not even being considered, because it was so early on in the market. And we really grabbed those three because we saw the potential and made it. And we really wanted to test if a VC would see an interest in these kind of models that they wouldn't otherwise.
Right.
And so basically there was a fund in Portugal, a VC fund, that was not impact necessarily. They wouldn't have like this thesis for investment, but we convinced them to like pay a closer attention to what we were doing. And they really saw the potential, to the point that they really like accepted, like, and confirmed the interest in investing, and they ended up by investing. And from here, like you understand that this is possible, and obviously the European Investment Fund in our case was extremely important. There's a very significant strategy by the European Investment Fund into creating this kind of impact investing funds European-wide. And so, yeah, we managed to have the confirmation of investment by the European Investment Fund, which is an extremely powerful magnet, let's put it this way, for other investors to tag along and to decrease, the perception of risk of this such new type of investment. And the role of foundations, in the case of the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation, was also extremely important, because it's the first time that this foundation, which has 3 billion euros like under on an asset, it's the first time they allocate part of their endowment into an impact investing fund. And it's huge, right? Because before, all the money kind of being invested was by their like philanthropic pool of money, and now they're actually allocating assets. And this is really important, and again, signals to the market, and a few corporates as well. So yeah, it's slightly different, the approach.
Well. Yeah, interesting.
And impact is about obviously creating change. Excuse me. Impact is about creating change. What is your personal vision? Like, why do you wake up and do this and challenge yourself every day? Like, what kind of change do you truly want to create with the funds that you've put together?
To me, it just makes sense. So like, it's the only, I think it's for one, it's a lot about the people you meet. It's an amazing way of meeting incredible people with incredible ideas and drives. And I think when it comes to impact in itself, it's something that has always clicked with me personally. And coming from kind of a love for gathering people and trying to facilitate some sort of serendipity or good moments by gathering people, is what led me into working with starting our first Catapult Future Fest, which is this physical gathering where you talk about the potential of exponential technologies and impact investing for future society, and that kind of building on that and learning more about and engaging more with how to use scalable tech as a tool, right, to kind of solve the big social and environmental challenges. Yeah. I don't know if that was an answer to your question, really.
How about you?
So to me, what helps me, get out of bed and go to work every day is the idea that I am extremely privileged in this world, and that because of that, I was, given all the opportunities in life, right to education, right to meal every time I need. So I'm extremely privileged, and therefore I have the responsibility to not give back, but make sure that we decrease the inequalities of the world. And this is literally what moves me. And then, and I want, as a millennial myself, I want to live in a world where my choices for consumption are sustainable.
Right.
Like I vote with, I vote with my consumption choices. I want to be able to invest my money in conscious investment opportunities. So I'm kind of also creating the world I want to live in and where I want my children to live in.
Exactly. That's the slogan for Catapult, create the world you want to live in. So very on the same
page. Do we have
there.
the questions? I don't have the iPad. Yeah. Or you guys can raise your hand too if you want to. Do it that way. What's one piece of advice that you got back, early in your career that has really helped you become the leaders that you are today?
So much, I have to say. I think, personally, I'm just very driven by just being incredibly curious about how everything works, and there's so many, and just wanting to learn from people and experts within their field. So having the chance to do that has been great. I would have to think about kind of if there's one particular advice. You?
I think that for me was following my gut feeling, because at the time I decided to enter this area. It was very early on in my career, and very on the whole market is something it didn't exist pretty much. So everyone thought around me that I was pretty crazy. And this advice of if you feel that it's right, if you see something, believe in yourself and go for it and build it.
Right.
And it was very hard, this decision, because it's super risky. But it was super risky. I think that today there's a little bit more foundations on all of this. But it was an incredible advice, and it's something that I recommend. So whenever you see the potential of something, go for it and try to build it, try to be part of it. If it fails, and sometimes I still question myself, is this leading anywhere? If it fails, we've tried, we've learned. There's so many other paths. I think.
Totally.
Yeah. I think one particularly inspiring thing is also seeing there's some amazing female investors popping up that are doing a lot of important work in particularly also diversity, and I think that's really important, and it's just to highlight kind of the incredible kind of lack of female presence in both in tech startups in general and in investing is important. I mean, just if you look at the state of European tech, which is a good kind of landscaping of the state of European tech that comes out every year, the one that came out this year showed that all of the venture capital in Europe in 2018, out of all of it, 93% went to all male founding teams, which says a lot about kind of the lack of female leaders and investors. So we need more. Yeah.
And we have a question in the front.
from a female leader.
Hi, Lubomila from Plan A, fighting climate change with data. My question is with regards to the due diligence that you make, because what I've noticed as a social impact startup founder, by talking to investors, I noticed that even though there's a label of impact investment, there's very little in the due diligence that actually validates what impact the company is making. Maybe as part of the statement of the company, there's some social problem that is being addressed, but my question to you is like, what kind of measurements do you take to address this problem? Because for me, you know, the most important thing in building this kind of a company is to have impact, and I want to be measured on that, and I don't see it enough.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good question, and I think the reason it comes up so often is because there still is no kind of common one-way kind of measurements to go to and to use. We rely a lot on the Sustainable Development Goals, seeing that it's like the most comprehensive research currently that we have. Of course, it spans broad, so then it's up to us to delve deeper into the whether it's an actual challenge and for the founder as well, right? And that is based on how knowledgeable one is in the field. And what we do is we have a network of a lot of mentors and experts that we tap into. I think for measuring kind of broadly more like what is actually impactful, and to find that and evaluate that in startups, one of the coolest projects that I think is existing or being built currently is coming out of Finland from the Upright project. It's a lady called Anu Niemin creating this net impact measurements. I would check that out as well. Yeah.
Does that help? Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the Women in Tech podcast. Thank you to TechChill. This episode is powered by Simplecast, and you guys can check out the Women in Tech podcast at womenintech.fm. This is just really exciting. Where can people connect with you further?
Via LinkedIn.
LinkedIn works.
Yes. Yeah.
What's best for you, LinkedIn? And for me, I'm at Espree Devora on Twitter, so be sure to say hello and enjoy the rest of TechChill.
Thank you.